Hi, it's Jack, and this is the podcast version of this episode. If you want to read the words as they're being analysed, then if you're on Spotify, you can become a subscriber of this channel or head over to the YouTube channel. And on both platforms, you can also sign up to get exclusive episodes and early access to the regular weekly episodes too. Alister Douglas, known as Yellow, says he remembers it all. The night he met Amy Bradley, the dance they had together, and the rules he had to live by. But there's one thing he never quite says, and there's some things I don't think he means to say.
So there were these two women that were recently interviewed that were there on that cruise too, that they thought they saw Amy and you head back up to the Viking Lounge after it closed.
No,
it didn't happen.
First of all, the keys that we use, and I did not even know that until this thing happened. The card keys that we use for our doors to go into the room. So once I went down and we went into my room, it would read the time you came in.
This is a statement investigation into one of the last people to have spent time with missing Amy Bradley. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new here, what I do is different from anyone else because I strip away everything apart from the words that are said by the person at the centre of the story. And then I use my process of statement investigation to get closer to seeing where the truth could lie, where deception could be happening, and also the motivations of a person. It's a process that I use with investigators, with corporate clients, and with the media to get a deep understanding of what is being said. So the case. Amy Bradley went missing during a Caribbean cruise in 1998. Now, the night before she went missing, she was seen with Alister Douglas, guy known as Yellow, at the time. Now, he says he went to bed at 1 a.m. However, some people say they have seen Yellow and Amy together after that. So I'm going to look at an interview that Alister Douglas gave recently to the True Crime This Week channel. It's the only time I can hear Alister talk, apart from in the Netflix documentary about Amy Bradley. So kudos to them for getting that interview. A point before we start to look at Alister's words, he speaks English, but he's from Grenada. So it's not English like you or I might know it if we talk to sort of a more general, well-understood form of English. So sometimes he's going to say words that sound a little bit strange. I'm not maybe going to pick on those as I might with some other people because I believe he's talking just a slightly different version of English than we speak. But we are going to dig into what he says, and it is hugely, hugely informative. So let's listen to the man known as Yellow.
What do you remember after all of these years? Do you remember Amy at all?
There's not a lot to remember in terms of remembering her, but I remember the short conversation we've had. So it was, I think it was a Monday night. I believe it was a Monday night. It's been years, so it's either Monday or Tuesday, but I believe it was a Monday night. There's a program called Dancing Under the Stars.
Yeah. Oh, I should tell you, I was on the ship like a month ago. I took a trip on the Rhapsody.
Oh.
So I know the layout of the Viking Lounge and all that.
Lovely. So, as usual, we play until midnight. We were sailing out of Aruba.
Yes.
The next day should be Curacao.
Yep.
So as you sail out of Aruba, we have this thing called Dancing Under the Stars. And we played. We finished a little after 12. We supposed to finish by 12. A little after 12. I can't tell you exactly what time. And normally people always come up and talk to us. And I remember her clearly coming across when we finished playing and came across to me and said, "Hi, good set, back then when I played, I jump around a lot and all of that." And many persons would have always compliment or talk about my way of entertaining. So I said, thank you, like normal. And then she said to me that she blows a saxophone. I said, okay, interesting. What do you blow? And first thing, like, what kind of music you like? And but at that time we were packing up. The band was packing up.
Yeah.
And I said to her, because that used to be my line. Once we finished play, we would go up to the lounge. What's this called at the time? What's the name of the club? You just came from the Viking Lounge,
yeah.
And we will hang there, but we would only hang until 1 o'clock, 5 to 1, 10 to 1, because as entertainers we could hang, but we need to be out of the area by 1 o'clock.
Right. Did you spot anything in those words? Because I got a lot. The question that is asked of him at the start is, what do you remember after all of these years? Do you remember Amy at all? Now, you've heard all the answer to that question. He doesn't mention Amy a lot. He mentions a hell of a lot of other stuff, but he doesn't spend a lot of time talking about Amy. His answer is, there's not a lot to remember in terms of remembering her, but I remember the short conversation we've had. So he wants us to know straight away, it's not I remember meeting her, it's that we had a short conversation, i.e. didn't spend a lot of time with her or didn't spend a lot of time talking to her. And it's short conversation we've had. Now, that's in the past tense. It's not the short conversation we had. It's we've in the past tense. Is that just a function of his English? Or is there something there which is making him say this slightly odd thing, the short conversation we have had? So it was Monday night. I believe it was a Monday night. It's been years. It's either Monday or Tuesday, but I believe it was a Monday night. There was a program called Dancing Under the Stars. Now, this is nothing at all to do with Amy. It's avoidance of the question here. So instead of talking about what do you remember about Amy, he's telling us what he remembers more in general. So it was Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, it was Monday. There was a program called Dancing Under the Stars. It's all irrelevant to what do you remember about Amy? It's what does he remember about that night, about the cruises in general? It's all very irrelevant. He hasn't gone straight for an answer. So is he avoiding it? Or is this just something he's very comfortable talking about? He's not so comfortable talking about Amy. He's not so comfortable talking about the night in question. But this is stuff that's easy to talk about. It's low stress, what he did night after night on these cruise ships. Is that why he is doing this talking here? But certainly he's not at the very start taking on talking what he remembers about Amy. The interviewer says, I should tell you, I was on the ship a month ago. I took a trip in the Rhapsody. I know the layout of the Viking Lounge and all that. He says, lovely, lovely, lovely. So, as usual, we play until midnight. We were sailing out of Aruba. Now, I'm picking out that word, as usual. What do you remember about Amy? There's no need to tell us what the usual was. Just tell us what happened. Very often when people are wanting to avoid talking about a specific subject, and he's been asked a specific question here, what do you remember about Amy? And he's talking in general, which again, is this just easier for him to talk about? Or does he want to direct us away from what happened that night to what usually happened? So as usual, we play until midnight. We were sailing out of Aruba. Context setting here, lots and lots of it. Not what does he remember about Amy. The next day should be Curacao, is what he says. The next day should be, again, this is this general thing. If we sailed out of Aruba, then we need to be going to Curacao, is what is there. So as you sail out of Aruba, we have this thing called Dancing Under the Stars. So this is all still in the general. Very, very little about Amy. Why is he avoiding talking about this? Why is he spending so much time, I think, just talking about things that he's comfortable talking about? And we played, again, all irrelevant here to what actually happened in his interaction with Amy. We finished a little after 12. We should have finished by 12. A little after 12. I can't tell you exactly what time. So nothing yet about Amy, bar I remember the conversation we had, right? What do you remember about Amy was the question, and all we've heard is there was a conversation, but I can tell you a lot about the ship's schedule. I can tell you a lot about what the band did at night. So I can even tell you the name of the event that they did, the Dancing Under the Stars. Nothing though, bar this conversation about Amy. And normally, people always come up and talk to us. I remember her clearly coming across when we finished playing and came across to me and said, hi, good set, you know. So once more, we're into the normal, the usual, but it's slightly different because now it's connected to Amy. Normally, people come up and talk to us, and I remember her clearly coming across when we finished playing, came across to me and said, hi, good set, you know. So what he's doing here is trying to say nothing out of the ordinary in my conversation with Amy. Normally, people come up to us, and I remember her coming across and saying a normal thing there. So, you know, nothing extraordinary happened here. Back then, when I played, I jumped around a lot and all of that. So again, very, very general. I remember her coming across. Now, that's at odds with his first statement. His very first statement was, I remember very little. but I remember the short conversation we had. But now he's saying he remembers her coming across. He does remember more than what he said at the very beginning. So I'm interested in this answer. It's very avoiding the question, and there's some contradictions inside there. Many persons would have always complimented or talked about my way of entertaining, so I said, thank you, like normal. She said to me that she blows a saxophone. So once again, many persons have always complimented or talked about my way of entertaining. Now, first of all, the correct standard English is many people, many persons is probably just his way of talking. I'm not going to go, oh, that sounds formal. Why is he using that? I'm going to not focus on that. What I am going to focus on, the fact is, again, he's talking in general, and he's very, very keen to show us this was all normal, this was all standard, this was an average night. Many persons would have always complimented or talked about my way of entertaining. So I said, thank you, like normal. Again, he really wants to get across, not the conversation that he had with Amy, but the fact it was bog standard. The fact this was the sort of thing that always happened. She said to me that she blows a saxophone. I said, okay, interesting. What do you blow? First thing, what kind of music you like? Now, what do you blow? She says to me she blows a saxophone. Now, that is an interesting way of saying you play a saxophone. She didn't say, I play the saxophone. She said she blows a saxophone in his words. I said, okay, interesting. What do you blow? Now, is that an innuendo that he dropped there? Is that a, oh, what do you blow? Is that what was going on there? Did Amy say, I play a saxophone? And he says, what do you blow? And then he tries to qualify that by saying, what type of music do you like? So, look, potentially innuendo, potentially a little bit of flirting, and nothing wrong with flirting or a little bit of innuendo, but it will become relevant when we look at some of the timeline here. What do you blow? What kind of music do you like? At that time, we were packing up. The band was packing up. I said to her, because that used to be my line. I said to her, because that used to be my line. That used to be my line? What used to be your line? I'm not entirely sure. Is it, what do you blow? Well, that only works if every person that came up to you says they play the saxophone, for it to be, what do you blow? So is he hiding something there? Is there something missing in the, I said to her, something, because that used to be my line. But what we've got now is definitely, there's a bit of flirtation going on here. He's played in the band, a woman has come and spoken to him, and he's starting the flirtation because that's what he did. That used to be my line. I don't know what was his line, but he's certainly saying, I was a flirt. I was flirtatious. Once we finished playing, we would go to the lounge. What's it called at the time? What's the name of the club? We just came from the Viking Lounge, so he works out the name of the club. But again, it's once we finished playing, we would go up to the lounge. So we've got, again, in general, once we finish playing, we would go up to the lounge. Also, just remember that. Once we finished playing, we would go up to the lounge. We've also heard about packing. We were packing up is what he said. And that's when she came across. So just a bit of timeline. Finished playing, packed up, we would go to the lounge, and the time they finished playing was just after 12 earliest in his telling. So once we finished playing, in general, we would go to the lounge. What's it called at the time? What's the name of the club? Yeah, he just came from the Viking Lounge. We would hang there, general again. But we would only hang until 1 o'clock, 5 to 1, 10 to 1. Because as entertainers, we could hang, but we needed to be out of the area by 1 o'clock. Now, this is so general. It's what we would do. Amy's disappeared again inside this story. It's just the general routine. And just, there wasn't a lot of time there because they finished playing 12 o'clock. After 12, they would have to pack up. Then they would go to the lounge and they would be out there until, in his saying, 1 o'clock, 5 to 1, 10 to 1. Very, very big on time, this guy, and telling us the times that things happened, the time they finished playing, the time that they had to be out of the area, which was 1 o'clock, but very little time there in his telling here of things to do. But so general, so little of Amy. We also have we need to be out of the area by 1 o'clock there. Not we should be out of the area by 1 o'clock, which suggests it's a rule, but maybe should be followed, but doesn't always be followed, but need to be out of the area by 1 o'clock. Suggests there is a need to be out of the area, not just a should, but a need. But he doesn't say we were. We would only hang until 1 o'clock, 5 to 1, 10 to 1, because as entertainers, we could hang, but we needed to be out of the area by 1 o'clock. So here, in this very first answer, timeline. So just watch what is coming next. So we've got some of the timeline. Playing, packing, spoke to her and flirted with her. That's the order of events that we've got so far from him. But in that answer, a lot of filler. He's more comfortable talking about what usually happens and talking about the band playing and talking about his performance and some of the mechanics of that than he is in talking about Amy. So keep an eye on that timeline, because we're going to see the second half of the answer to that question. Just keep an eye on the timeline and just try and place the actions that he's speaking about with the timeline as we listen to more from Alister.
Yeah.
So I went down like I normally do, changed my clothes, had a quick shower, and I came up. When I came up, she was on the deck, on the decking outside.
Ah.
So she saw me and she said, hi. And I said, hi. But she was smoking a lot, and that's not something I know or like. I growing up in Grenada, you hardly ever saw people smoke. And I was young, so it was like not a norm for me.
Yeah.
So we went up to the club, because that's where I was going. And we sat there. Of course, it's noisy, so there's not a lot you can say. But she was smoking a lot. And I asked her, I said, why are you? For me, it's uncomfortable. And it's like, why are you? And she said to me, she said her dad is an insurance manager or something like that. And he found out that she's gay. And he forced her to come to the cruise. Well, but first of all, with hearing that, I was like, well, I mean, I didn't know what answer to give anyway. So I said to her, I was going on the dance floor. I was only going to be able to dance maybe 1 or 2 songs because of the time. So we came on the dance floor, danced. We both were on the floor. I know there were cameras that took photos of us dancing. I remember seeing all of that. And about 5 minutes to 1, I said, look, I have to go. I've got to be out of passenger area. And I left. That was my last conversation. And
That was the last time you saw her?
Last time I saw her.
Have you noticed Yellow's theme yet? He has a theme, something he keeps returning to. Can you see what it is? Let's see if you spot it as we go through the words. He says, so I went down like I normally do, changed my clothes, had a quick shower, and I came up. When I came up, she was on the deck and outside. She saw me and she said hi. Now, interestingly here, some really good past tense, which is what we would expect when we hear events being relayed from the past. They should be in past tense. Sometimes when people are making things up and things didn't happen, they'll slip into some present tense as they're telling the story. But what we've got here is very reliable past tense, especially describing this meeting with Amy. I went down like I normally do. So once again, please do not think there was anything exceptional about this night, because no, everything was normal like I normally do. Changed my clothes, had a quick shower, and I came up. Now, this is an interesting one, because we've already found ourselves very tight for time. Finished playing after midnight, packed up the band equipment. Now we have him going down, having a quick, changing his clothes and having a quick shower. So really the timeline is getting very, very tight. If he has to be out by 10 to 1 was his earliest time out, or 1 o'clock. Not a lot of time at all to be in this lounge. And he did say when we finished playing, we would go up to the lounge. But now he's saying when we finish playing, normally I would go down and get a shower and change my clothes. Changed my clothes and had a quick shower. Interesting there. We've changed his clothes, had a quick shower. It should be undressed, had a quick shower, put on new clothes. Potentially, we don't want to talk about being undressed, so it would be went downstairs, had a shower, put on a change of clothes, came back up. She was on the deck outside. She saw me and she said hi. So yeah, that good past tense there. I said hi, and she was smoking a lot. That's something I know or like. Now, interesting, again, in this compressed or expanded timeline. I said hi, and she was smoking a lot. That's not something I know or like. Saying hi takes less than a second. Hi takes less than a second. Smoking a lot, that takes longer. It takes time to smoke 1 cigarette, and that would be smoking. Smoking a lot is 2 cigarettes back to back at the very least. So that takes a lot longer than just this high. So he's condensing or hiding something here, because obviously in the time it took him to work out that she was smoking a lot, then they said more than high. Growing up in Grenada, you hardly ever saw people smoke. And I was young, so it was not a norm for me. I was young and it was not a norm for me. Growing up in Grenada, you hardly ever saw people smoke. He's attempting to depict himself as an innocent and naive here, aware of this big world of people smoking that he didn't really like. Again, is this very much like what we usually do? This is what my experience was, and I wasn't really into all of that because this is a whole new world for me. I.e., I'm just an innocent person in all of this. Is that why that description is in there? Then he says, so we went to the club. Now, so would be an explanation, but there's nothing there that says why the club happened. It's so we went to the club. But we've got the word we there. It's not so she and I went to the club, so I took her to the club. It's we went to the club. There's some unity there in that pronoun of we went to the club. So I think that it's moved from I said hi, she was smoking, not something I like, to we went to the club. So I think in that conversation that he's not letting us in on because it's longer than just this hi, we went to the club. There's some union has been formed between the two of them, probably in the time it took to smoke lots of cigarettes. That's where I was going, and we sat there. Of course it's noisy, so there's not a lot you can say. Got some hidden stuff here, but we've got we sat there again. So they've gone to the club and they're still united. It's we sat there. Of course, it's noisy. So there's not a lot you can say. Not we didn't have a conversation, and it's not a lot. It's not nothing was said at all. There's not a lot you can say. So again, I get the feeling that there is conversation between him and Amy being hidden, and it's not just we sat and we tried to talk in the lounge, but we couldn't because it was noisy. Just like with the cigarette, we said hi. He doesn't say we said some other stuff, and she was smoking a lot. He is not letting us in on the conversation. In fact, he's trying to let us know this conversation didn't happen. He's hiding it. He's glossing over whatever it was that they spoke about. She was smoking a lot. I asked her, I said, why are you? For me, it's uncomfortable. Why you? And she said to me, she said, her dad is an insurance manager or something like that. And he found out that she's gay and he forced her to come to the cruise. Now, let's just break that down. He says to her, why are you smoking a lot? And her answer is, my dad's an insurance manager? That doesn't fit, does it? That doesn't seem like a very natural flowing conversation. Why are you smoking a lot? My dad's an insurance manager. The next part would make sense. Why are you smoking a lot? I'm really stressed. My parents or my dad found out I was gay and forced me to come on this cruise. That would make sense. But the first thing he mentions about dad is he's an insurance manager. Very specific job. Got nothing to do with anything that we talk about, nothing to do with anything he was asked about. But the first thing he mentions about dad is he is an insurance manager or something like that. So that has got his interest for some reason. And he found out that she's gay and he forced her to come on the cruise. Actually, we've learned about as much about the dad as we have about Amy when they're talking here. What do we know about Amy from his talks? She smoked a lot, and the fact that she played saxophone. We've now learned that she's gay as well. But we've learned lots about the dad, his job, his attitude, what he's just found out about his daughter. So he is, I believe, hiding things around his interactions that he had with Amy. Well, first of all, with hearing that, I was like, well, I didn't know what answer to give anyway. So, well, first of all, hearing that, anyway, blah, 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 all a bit mush. The meaning is, first of all, I didn't know what answer to give. Fair enough point. But I didn't know what answer to give anyway. Did he give an answer that was wrong or was taken badly or something like that, and he wants to cover that up? So it's I didn't know what answer to give anyway, or did he fumble his response? And he says, well, first of all, but we don't get what was second. We don't get what comes next. First of all, I gave a bad answer, but then I made it up or whatever it is. Again, I get the feeling that conversation between Alister and Amy is being glossed over in Alister's telling of this story here. I said to her, I was going on the dance floor. I was only going to be able to dance maybe one or two songs because of time. So we came to the dance floor. So we have here, again, this forming of unity. I said to her, I was going on the dance floor. That's me, me, me. I said to her, I was going on the dance floor. I was only going to be able to dance maybe one or two songs. So we came onto the dance floor. So again, I think we've got a sense of unity as they went to dance. So whatever's happened in this conversation, it ain't so bad, I think, because it's we came onto the dance floor. It's not she came onto the dance floor with me, or I took her onto the dance floor or anything like that. Does he take his curfew seriously? It's certainly something he gets across a lot. Maybe one or two songs because of the time. He's very, very aware of the time. Then he says, danced. We both came. We both were on the floor. So again, we've still got this we. A little bit fractured. Danced. We both came. We both were on the floor. I know there were cameras that took photos of us dancing. Us, another joint pronoun to show that the pair of them were together dancing. But interesting, he feels the need to mention, I know there were cameras that took photos of us dancing. Sometimes when people are being deceptive and telling a story that didn't happen or a curated version of the story, the things you say have to match what is known. For example, if photos exist, you can't say that we didn't dance together because there are photos of you there. So if he's making a story here, it has to collide with things that are known and facts that are out there, i.e. the fact there are photos of them dancing. It may be easier for him to say, yeah, she said, well done after the show, and I don't remember seeing her ever again. But we know that he did. So he has to fit that in. And I think this is a linguistic marker of the fact that he knows he has to get this part in of the story. I know there were cameras that took photos of us dancing. I remember seeing all that. So he's very, very aware of these photos. Potentially they cause him stress. Potentially they're a bit of a high priority for him because this is proof that him and Amy were together that night. And about 5 minutes to 1, I said, look, I have to go. I've got to be out of the passenger area. What we've got going on here is I know there were cameras that took photos of us. That's in the present tense. He's jumped out of the past tense and he's talking about what he knows now. Again, another indicator, I think, that he feels he has to cover off the fact that these photos or video, is it, of them exist. And I remember seeing all that. Is he only telling us this because it's undeniable? Then again, we've got this repetition back to the theme of the fact that he's really, really aware of time and curfews. And I left, and that was my last conversation, and that was the last time you saw her, is asked, and he says, last time I saw her. Now, you'll notice there we have a split, a departure. I left, that was my last conversation, not I left, that was our last conversation. You'll notice that she's disappeared as well. It's put to her by the interviewer. That was the last time you saw her. That's a yes, no question. And he doesn't say, yeah, that was the last time I saw her. He just repeats back the question, last time I saw her. So listen, that was a very long answer to the question we heard way back at the beginning. But we've got more filler about what usually happens, about the fact that he went and got a shower and all that sort of stuff. Very little about that interaction there. So filler, he remembers a conversation, but there is more. Talking to her, what did they converse about? He jumps over a hell of a lot about that. I do feel a sense that he was obligated by the curfew or really aware of the curfew, but did he live up to that curfew? He doesn't quite say. We'll hear him talk about that more later. We hear that she said to him what he asked her, but not what he told her about himself as well. So we know that there was part of the conversation, why are you stressed? Why are you smoking a lot of cigarettes? But we don't hear anything about him sharing any of himself, anything about what he said to her at all. Even he doesn't share his reply to the story about being gay. Now, let's look at the timeline there. So the timeline is she approached. There was this blow, innuendo. This was this flirtation. I gave her a line. They were packing up. He went downstairs to get showered. He comes up, she smokes and is gay. So we've got a bit of a timeline there of he flirts. He went downstairs to get showered. Now, he didn't say in the first pass of his, what he usually does, the going to get a shower and changing was the normal thing to do. He said we'd pack up and go to the lounge and be away by one. So did he feel he was into something here? There was a flirtation, something came back. So he went downstairs to get showered because he'd been jumping around on stage a lot. He comes up, she smokes a lot, which he doesn't like, he's not used to, and is gay, another thing that he's not used to with his upbringing, and realises, I've put in a lot of work here and there's going to be no return. That, to me, is something that, it just makes me wonder a little bit about what went on. Was he flirting with her? Was he spurned? And were there some actions taken on that? Have you noticed about the theme yet? He just keeps coming to a theme that he talks about all the time. Let's see if you're right when we have a look at this clip.
Why do you think she told you that?
I think because I asked why she was smoking, maybe she wanted me to know. I don't know. But all I can say that was her reply to me for the reason why.
Was smoking because of the stress.
Yes. So to me, that's a reply from the question I asked, because he was smoking. Yeah. Really and truly, I would have rather not be there. So that's why I asked, why are you smoking like that? It's just like what you call a chain. Once you've done with one, another one was lit. Another one was lit. While we were there, maybe about 3 cigarettes was lit at the same time, one after the other, But it was not enough time, because the person I am, I like to console people. I like to talk with people. There was not enough time. Maybe if the following day I would have seen her, maybe I would have.
Right, listen, coming up, this guy's going to make a massive, massive slip. You don't want to miss that. You just keep alert when he's talking, because there's a huge slip coming from him here. Here he's dealing with the question, why do you think she told you that? And this is why she told him that she was gay. I think because I asked why she was smoking. Maybe she wanted me to know. I don't know. Why did she tell you that? Well, it was an answer to the question about why she was smoking, so that doesn't answer the question. Maybe she wanted me to know. I don't know. But all I can say was that was her reply for me for the reason why. So all I can say, that's an attempt to just narrow down this question here. Why did she tell you that? Was it about the smoking? Or was he trying it on with her? Was he flirting with her? Was he inviting her back to his cabin, or whatever it was? And she says, you need to know I'm gay. I'm not interested in you. This is not going to go anywhere. Is that why? All I can say was that was her reply to me. Is that all you could say? She's asked that she was smoking because of the stress. He says, yes. So to me, that's the reply from the question I asked, because she was smoking. Really and truly, I would have rather not been there. So that's why I asked, why are you smoking like that? So what we have here is, so to me, that's the reply to the question I asked. Very personal thing. This is all to me. Don't ask about anything else, or don't ask if it doesn't make sense, because she was smoking. Really and truly. Is this an attempt to convince us that he's being honest and that something else has happened? Because why feel the need to tell us really and truly what happened? I would rather have not been there. So that's why I asked, why are you smoking like that? Again, did she rebuff him in some way, or did he feel rebuffed? Did he feel that he put in a lot of work with the lines that he used every night with women, and then when it turns out that she's gay, he's like, It was like what you call a chain. Once you're done, another was lit, another one was lit. So he's talking about chain smoking there. While we were there, maybe about 3 cigarettes was lit at the same time, one after the other. So while we were there, so we've still got this unity here in the pronouns. While we were there, maybe about 3 cigarettes were lit at the same time, one after another. I told you it was longer than hi, remember? We said hi, I said hi, and she was smoking a lot. So maybe 3 cigarettes were lit. Now, 3 is a liar's number, by the way, so it may not have been 3 cigarettes. It may have been 1 cigarette and he didn't like cigarettes at all, or it may have been 2. It may have been 5 and it was a longer conversation, but he's settled with 3 were lit at the same time, one after the other there. So look, in his telling of the story here, there was 3 cigarettes. They must have had a longer conversation than the high, but the high just didn't happen. And for the opening, in his words, to happen, which is I'm gay, my dad's an insurance manager, and he made me come on the cruise. Now, that may have happened all the way through the cigarettes, but in his telling, he wanted to know why she was smoking so much. So that could only have come in his telling after 2 or 3 cigarettes. Why are you smoking so much? So what happened in between then? Was this the full-on yellow flirting mode? Could have been. But it was not enough time, because the person I am, I like to console people. I like to talk with people. But it was not enough time, because the person I am, I like to console people. What wasn't enough time? The time of the 3 cigarettes? Did he feel the smoking time was wasted time? Is that what's going on here? It was not enough time, because the person I am, I like to console people. I like to talk with people. I like to console people? What? You like to meet people who need consoled? I understand if someone needs consoled, it's maybe nice to give them consolation, but I like to console people? Is this the sign of a manipulative player? Likes to find someone's weak spot and identify with that and then tell them it's not so bad, I'll make things better for you. Is that what he means by I like to console people? Actually, is this kind of person who's trying to say this naive young guy from Grenada, Is he actually a player? Is he actually someone who's a little bit manipulative and likes to zone in on someone's weak spot, which is why he likes to console people? If he meets strong people, then he can't console them, and maybe he can't, work his magic around them. He needs to meet people who are unhappy or vulnerable, and then he can console them. He changes that to, I like to talk to people, because I think he maybe realizes that saying, I like to console people, sounds a little bit creepy. There was not enough time. This time again. Maybe if the following day I would have seen her, maybe I would have. What? Console her? There just wasn't enough time to console her? Is that what he is trying to say in all these words here? There wasn't enough time to console her. Maybe if the following day I would have seen her, maybe I would have. That feels to me like is in his head that he didn't see her the following day there. But a very, very, very interesting answer. Here we just have the recurring theme of being time-bound. He talks about it all the time. He talks about timelines from the band finishing playing, the packing up, the going upstairs, how many dances he could do. He has a recurring theme of being time-bound. Now, why is that? Why does he want to keep mentioning how time-bound he is? Is it because he wants us to believe that he obeyed by the rules and there's only this very short window where he could have this conversation with Amy? Or is it because he was following these rules and therefore his interaction with Amy was, by the virtue of these rules, only very short? But he really wants us to know how time-bound he was. But something slightly predatory in that phrase that he has about consoling people that I didn't like one bit. I really didn't like. There was not enough time for me to console her. That sounds exceedingly, exceedingly predatory. So listen, huge slip from Yellow coming up. I believe it's something he did not mean to say. Also, he took a lie detector test with the FBI. What do his words around that reveal to us? Now listen, do you ever feel like you're not being told the full story? I'm feeling it right here from Alister Douglas. He is glossing over things, but it's happening to us day in and day out as well. So maybe not as nefarious as a case of a missing woman, but it does happen. And I'm here to give you the key to seeing deeper into someone's words, because this is about hearing the world with new ears. I'm on a mission to share this skill with as many people as possible. So if you want that to be you, do subscribe to this channel or follow it. Join in with the movement to understand more. You can delve deeper too. There's a treasure trove of archive content waiting to be explored, including missing people, including murder cases, all sorts of ways of looking at the words that people use to find out what is really going on. And do you know someone who needs this, someone who deserves to hear the truth in their life? Well, then hitting the share button will help them get to this, or press the like button, recommend it, pass this on, because every click, every single share, all fuels the fire, because it allows me to dig deeper, to analyse further and bring this life-changing skill to even more people. Let's hear some more from Alister Yellow Douglas.
So there were these two women that were recently interviewed that were there on that cruise too, that they thought they saw Amy and you head back up to the Viking Lounge after it closed. No, it didn't happen.
First of all, the keys that we use, and I did not even know that until this thing happened. The card keys that we use for our doors to go into the room. So once I went down and we went into my room, it would read the time you came in. And I never really knew that. As I said, I was a young boy. All this technology was not known to me.
So they knew when you went back to your stateroom.
I only got to know that the following day, and this is how I know. The hotel manager, the morning around 7 o'clock, I was awakened by a call by the hotel manager, and he asked me, Douglas, do you have a woman in your room? It was forbidden. It was forbidden bringing them in our room, going in our room. It was forbidden dating. And I'm going to be very straight with you. In my life I've been in the Royal Caribbean for a little over 5 years. And I've sit and talked with a lot of people, and we've made dates and stuff like that. But of course, 1 week, nothing could, So he asked me the question, and I said no. And I asked, why? He said that the woman you were talking to last night at the club, we can't find her. So I said, okay. And he said, all right, I will call you back. The phone was hung up. Matter of fact, he told me, don't leave the room, but he will talk to,
Wow.
And it's, a matter of fact, right after that, from what I know, They ground the ship shortly after that, close it up, nobody can go out, nobody can come in. And this is when the investigation started, is when I realized that they could have checked the time I went into my room.
Yeah.
Because I did not know that. So I'm not allowed to be back out of my room until in the morning period.
Yeah.
So once I clock in at 1, sometimes I might have gone downstairs sometimes. Normally we would go downstairs, and if I'm hungry I will go to the crew mess and all of that and then clock in, you know. But once I got in, I'm in. I did not come back out until I got that phone call. And then I was told, don't leave the room. Matter of fact, was both of us in the room, one of the other musicians. So each room, we were 4 musicians at the band. So each 2 in one room, 2 in another room on bunk beds. So Oscar Alexander was the guy there with me on the top. I was at the bottom.
Wow. So much in this answer. So much there. Not very much of it that I like or comforts me at all. It's put to Alister. So there are these 2 women that were recently interviewed. They were there on that cruise too. They thought they saw Amy and you head back up to the Viking Lounge after it closed. He says, no, it didn't happen. He says, first of all, the keys that we use, and I did not even know that until this thing happened, the card keys that we use for our doors to go into the room. So once I went down and we went into my room, it would read the time you came in. Pronouns here are off the scales. So first of all, the keys that we use, and I did not even know that until this happened. So the keys we use, is that just we, the band? It could be, but it's more than one person that was using these cards. The keys that we use, and I did not know that until this thing happened. The card keys that we use, we've got that we use again for our doors. So I think we is the band here because it's our doors. And Amy obviously didn't own one of those doors. Go into the room. So once I went down, what? He doesn't finish that. He's talking about himself and someone else. Once I went down, he changes it. He takes the other person out and just talks about himself. He pulls out of that thought. Once I went down and we went into my room, it would read the time you came in. So once 2 people, changes it to once I went down. Once that's more than one person. Once we went into my room, it would read the time you came in. So who's the we? Because he said in his words there, we went down, I think. And certainly we went into my room. That's not just him on his own. His pronouns are fine everywhere else. You know, we see him talk about we danced and so on. We went into my room. It would read the time you came in. And I never really knew that. As I said, I was a young boy. All this technology was not known to me. I never really knew that. So did you know that? Was it a trick on the boat that you used your key cards at certain ways to show that you were in your room when you weren't really? I.e., did you go down to your room, open it with the key card, I don't know, put something in there so the door can't shut properly? Who knows? I never really knew that though. I did not know that. And again, he wants to get across, I was this green young lad. As I said, I was a young boy. All this technology was not known to me. But look, the question that was asked is, did you head back up to the Viking Lounge after it was closed? He says, no. No, it didn't happen. And then he talks about going down to his room, not going back up to the Viking Lounge at all. He talks about going to his room, and he talks about we going to this room. He does not answer the question. And once more, it's all quite general. It's about the door, the keys that we use, and these things are all logged. He doesn't say, that night, I went to my room at 1 o'clock. The key cards show it. He talks about not knowing the key card system, how it works, and he talks about what people in general did. But that pronoun change, once I went to my room, we went into my room. He's asked, so they knew when you went back to your stateroom. He says, I only got to know the following day. And this is how I know. The hotel manager, the morning around 7 o'clock, I was awakened by a call by the hotel manager. And he asked me, he said, Douglas, Do you have a woman in your room? It was forbidden. It was forbidden bringing them into our room, going into our room. So I know there's some problems here around the timeline. I tend not to look at timelines and so on. If I don't know, I'll just go with his timeline and believe the words that he says, which was what he's saying is around 7, he got a call. He asked me, he said, Douglas, do you have a woman in your room? It was forbidden. So once again, it's all these rules that he's talking about. But what he doesn't say is he follows these rules. He's very aware of what the rules are and he lists them out. But he doesn't talk to us about whether he follows these rules often or not. So, do you have a woman in your room? It was forbidden. It was forbidden bringing them in our room, going in our room. The question's about a woman, but he says it's forbidden bringing them in our room, suggesting that woman exist, that women in the room exist, or women he'd like to take back to his room exist. But them, again, player, guy who has a line, likes to reel women in, likes to console them, and then he wants to take them to his room. At the very least, he may well have done that. It was forbidden dating, but I've got to be very sure to you, in my life, I've been in the Royal Caribbean for a little over 5 years, and I've sat and talked with a lot of people, and we've made dates and stuff like that. So, he is very clear about telling us what the rules are. He really wants us to know that he's aware of all these rules about the fact he's not allowed to date, the fact he's not allowed to have women in his room, the fact that he's got to be off the crew have got to be off the areas where the travellers are by 1 o'clock. He's very, very clear on those. I said he doesn't say whether he follows them or not, and here he says he didn't follow them. Dating was forbidden, but I made dates and stuff like that. I made dates and stuff like that. Is that taking women back to his room? It could well be. What we know here is he's explicitly saying he doesn't follow all the rules. Although he wants to say I was this innocent little boy with all these rules in front of me, he doesn't say he followed them, and now he's saying he broke them. Now, I've got a curious phrase here, but of course, 1 week, nothing could, now, what does that mean? Someone that I know has looked at these words suggested that it's, but of course, 1 week, nothing could, and was that the week that Amy was on the boat and was there something around these rules could be lax or something? What I think it is, and he stops saying it, he pulls out of this thought, you'll notice that it disappears, but of course, 1 week, nothing could, nothing could what? No, I don't know. I think that's the cruises were 1 week, and that over 1 week you could date, but nothing serious would come of it. You were there with the person for 1 week, very much holiday romance-esque. That you could do some things for a week, and then that person would leave the boat, and you'd move on to the next one. He goes back to talking about the call with the manager. So he asked me the question, and I said no. Now, he asked me the question and I said no. That's a very different concept from he asked me the question and I said I'm alone, or it's only me and Oscar here. There is no woman in my room. It's I said no. But was no the truth? He doesn't say that. And I asked, why? He said, that woman you were talking to in the club, we can't find her. So I said, okay. And he said, all right, I will call you back. The phone was up. As a matter of fact, he told me don't leave the room. Sorry, the phone was hung up. As a matter of fact, he told me don't leave the room. Jumping around in timeline here. And he's trying to quote verbatim this phone call, which is, why not just tell us the concept? He phoned and asked me if there was anyone in my room. And I said, no, there was no one in my room because there was no one in my room. He said, don't leave. He told me to stay there. And then we had another phone call later. But he's trying to quote this phone call verbatim. Strange. As a matter of fact, he told me don't leave the room, but he will talk to something that is unclear. As a matter of fact, right after that, from what I know, they ground the ship shortly after that, close it up, nobody can go out, nobody can come in. And this is when the investigation started, is when I realised that they could have checked the time I went to my room, because I did not know that. Very, very keen for us to know that he didn't know they could check the time that people went to the room. Really? Really? You're on a ship, there's a whole bunch of crew there that will know all the games and dodges that can be played, and no one told you about it. You were so naive, you just went to your bed at 1 o'clock and everyone else stayed up. Really? I did not know that. The fact he keeps saying I did not know that suggests to me he wants us to be convinced that he did not know that. So I'm not allowed to be out of my room until the morning period. So once I clock in at 1, sometimes I might go downstairs sometimes. Normally we would go downstairs, and if I'm hungry I would go to the crew mess and all of that, then clock in, but once I got in, I'm in. Again, focus on timelines. So I clock in at 1. He doesn't say what he clocks into, but he's also, I clock in at 1. Again, that's very different from I go to my room at 1. He's talking about a concept of the clock catching the key card here, not the concept that he went to his room and never came out. I do not come back out until I got that phone call. Well, when you got the phone call, you were told not to come back out. And then I was told, don't leave the room. Matter of fact, it was both of us in the room, one of the other musicians. So each room, 4 musicians at the band. So each 2 in one room, 2 in another room on bunk beds. So Oscar Alexander was the guy with me on the top. I was at the bottom. So we have here the mention of Oscar Alexander being in the room as well. However, he's talking in general again. So each 2 in one room, 2 in another. Oscar Alexander was the guy with me on the top. He's talking in general. He's not talking about that night. And very deliberately mentions Oscar Alexander. Full name of the guy. Is that just how he talks about people? Always giving the full names? He never mentions names anywhere else, I think, in anything I've heard from him. Or is there something very deliberate about the way he says Oscar Alexander? He was the guy at the top. I was at the bottom. That's the end of the answer to that question. So let me ask you, did he go back to the lounge with Amy after the lounge was closed? The point that was put to him. He said a no, but then he gives this really long answer, which ends up, goes via key cards and crew messages and phone calls the next morning, and his sleeping arrangements with Oscar Alexander. He was at the bottom, Oscar was at the top. It's a long, long way from the point that was put to him about going back to the lounge. Why did he avoid that? Did he take Amy back to the lounge? I have really no idea. So here, he dodges the question about going back to the lounge. He does not expand on that at all. He says we twice about going to his room that night. I, and we went into the room. Huge, huge, huge thing. He creates a massive, massive distance between the accusation that he went back up to the lounge with Amy and ending up sleeping on the bottom bunk. It's just such a long way from the question that was asked. He's taken it a long, long diversion route. We learn more detail about the morning after Amy went missing than the night before. He's very good at telling us the conversation that he had on this phone call. Word for word, he can tell us what was said, what he was told to do, why they were calling him, what he said back. We learn a lot more detail about that conversation than any conversation this guy had with Amy. And he is very aware of the rules, but he doesn't always follow them. He does not say, in fact, he tells us he doesn't always follow them. Listen, I got into this case because in the Netflix documentary, you will see that Alister Douglas gave him a call and asks him some questions around this. And I thought, he's avoiding these questions from the daughter. He actually, in this interview, talks about his experience of being spoken to by his daughter and the fact he knew Netflix were listening. We will listen to him talking about that very shortly. In the meantime, some more from the man they call Yellow.
Then came the FBI.
Yeah.
They grounded the ship.
Did you have to take a lie detector test, or was
They, again, I go back to my innocence of these things. So of course, every person who would have interacted with her, the people who cleaned the room, the people who served her dinner, everybody was interrogated. I was put all of these things on me, and maybe did 1 or 2 or 3 because the sessions went on and on and on and on and on. Lie detector tests.
What did they say to you afterwards?
Well, at that time, they did not say anything much to me. They took the stuff off and they released me. But then it was followed up by a woman called Sherry, and I'm sorry, she left her card with me, but that's years ago. Yeah. Sherry was an FBI agent.
Yeah.
She came to Grenada, met me at a hotel, and interviewed me a couple of times. And at the last time she spoke with me, she said to me, "Look, you are clear from this." She said
That's
to me,
going to be good to hear.
Well, of course. I mean, I was not really worried because I know that I don't know anything about all of this. But at the same time, I was a bit nervous because this is a new thing for me. This is my name being mixed up in something that I don't know about, and I'm not used to this.
Okay, then came the FBI. They ground the ship. Did you have to take a lie detector test? Guys, did he have to take a lie detector test? The answer is yes. but we get a huge, big explanation. Again, it feels to me like diversion away from, did you take a lie detector test? Then there was some suspicion or some possibility that you could be involved. But he wants to just roam away from talking about any of that and talks about the lie detector test in great detail. Again, I go back to my innocence of these things. Innocence, priority there for him. So, of course what? Of course, every person who would have interacted with her, the people who cleaned her room, the people who served her dinner, everybody was interrogated. Here he's going for the safety of the crowds. Look, it wasn't just me that got a lie detector test. Everybody was interrogated. Now, what that's saying to me is that he was interrogated. He felt like he was interrogated. Someone took it seriously enough to interrogate him. In his words, he was interrogated. Notice that the people who interacted with her, the people who cleaned her room, the people who served her dinner, they were interrogated. He doesn't talk about the lie detector test for them, though. So did they have specific interest in him? So I put all of these things on me. I was put all of these things on me, and maybe one or two or three because the sessions went on and on and on and on. Lie detector test is so again, I think he's just trying to pull the train out the station and take it as far away from the question as possible. And he runs out of steam there about saying anything about the lie detector test and avoiding saying anything incriminating around that test. What did they say to you afterwards? Well, at the time, they did not say anything much to me. So they did say something, but he wants to hide whatever that was. At the time, they did not say anything much to me. He's very good at concealing conversations when he wants to and revealing conversations, frankly, when it's for his own benefit. They took the stuff off and they released me. But then it was followed up by a woman called Sherry. I'm sorry she left her car with me, but that's years ago. I think he wants to give her a second name. Unlike Oscar Alexander, he doesn't remember Sherry's second name. Or did Sherry exist? I don't know. Sherry was an FBI agent. She came to Grenada. She met me at a hotel and interviewed me a couple of times. And at the last time she spoke with me, she said to me, listen, you are clear from all of this. She said to me, it's put to him, that's got to be good to hear. He says, well, of course, I mean, I was not really worried because I know that I don't know anything about all of this, but at the same time, I was a bit nervous-ish because of this. This is a new thing for me. Whiplash there from that. Was he worried? Was it good to hear that he's in the clear? Look, an innocent person, it would be really good to hear that you're in the clear. If you're an innocent person, you've been interrogated, you've had a lie detector test, and then the FBI come to see you and say you're in the clear, you're an innocent person. It's got to be great to hear. The only sort of person who would say it's not great to hear is someone with something to hide because he doesn't want to show how great it was. He doesn't want to show how worried he was. And of course, this was a new thing for me. Hey, Alister, let me tell you, if the FBI came to me and said that I was in the clear, it would be a new thing for me as well. As this is not about your innocent young man routine here. This is about a really serious allegation or serious things that are being put to you. It's fine to be worried, to be nervous about it. And also, it's a new thing for most people that face it. You know, the people that cleaned their room or served their food, it would be a new thing for them too. This is my name being mixed up in something that I don't know about. Not involved in, just something I don't know about. And I'm not used to this. Of course you're not used to this. He's very, very keen to just push these innocence themes there. And the lie detector description, interestingly, he talks about the process, things being stuck on, things being taken off. He doesn't talk about the questions that he was asked in the lie detector test at all. Just focuses on the process, stays away. Once more, another conversation that Alister wants to hide. Let's listen to one last bit from Alister. This is him talking about the interaction that we saw on Netflix with his daughter, Amika.
My daughter, who lives in the U.S., has been bombarded. As a matter of fact, I think she met with some people some time ago. Yes, only lately. We haven't talked much lately because lately she called me one day.
Yeah.
Maybe like 6 or 7 weeks ago. But first of all, she called me maybe about 8 weeks ago and said, Daddy, you know, this thing with the girl, look, I keep getting all this stuff coming to me and I'm concerned with my daughter. And I said, Amika, listen, I said, if you want, you can let people know that I'm not your father, because I said, I can't explain this. This has been going on for years. People have been sending me stuff, and I said to her, the truth will come out. I say, and when the truth come out, I will sue the people who've been making documentaries about me. But I say, for now, it's just in the hands of who's investigating, but things always comes up. The truth, no matter how long it is, it always surfaces. Somebody's gonna know. Somebody knows something and somebody will speak at some point.
Yes, I think so.
And I said that to her. About a week later, she called me. And I'm not stupid. I know people were listening to her. And I didn't know at first, but I can tell you how I knew after. She called me and said, Daddy, you know, I spoke to you about the people sending me stuff, and this Amy, and there's a documentary about you. How come people can say they saw you on the beach? I said, well, God, I was not no beach. No way. I live in Grenada next to the beach. I hardly even go to the beach. So, I mean, why would I be on the beach? And people say they saw you. I say, well, if people have seen me somewhere, then of course they have evidence then that I know this girl. I said, I've never been anywhere. Since after talking to that girl that night, that was it.
Okay, let's dive in partway through that. I said, Amika, listen, I say if you want, you can let people know I'm not your father, because I say I can't explain this. This has been going on for years. I can't explain this. What does that mean? It's not, I had nothing to do with it, but disassociate yourself with me if you want, but if you're getting a real hard time, I can't explain this. This has been going on for years. People have been sending me stuff, and I said to her, the truth will come out. I say, and when the truth comes out, I will sue the people who've been making documentaries about me. But I say for now, it's just in the hands of who's investigating. But things always comes up. The truth, no matter how long it is, it always surfaces. It always surfaces. That's a metaphor about something coming to the top from water. Do you see what I'm getting at? One of the things that could have happened to Amy is that she's gone overboard by her own means, by someone else's means, and will the truth surface? Is that what is in his head? That doesn't necessarily mean he's guilty and pushed her overboard or anything like that. It could just mean he thinks that she fell off the ship. You'll think back to everything we've looked at over the past hour, and his speech is not that sophisticated. He doesn't use a lot of metaphors when he's talking. He's very straightforward about what he says. But here he has gone for one, and it's around Amy Bradley. He thinks the truth will surface. Very, very curious choice of words there. Somebody knows something and somebody will speak at some point. And I said to her about a week later, she called me, and I'm not stupid. I know people were listening to her. Now, somebody knows something and somebody will speak at some point. How does he know that? Because listen, if what happened was an accident, if there were no witnesses, if no one has a clue about what happened to Amy, or if Amy managed to just run away and get away from whatever it was that she wanted to escape from and has never told anyone about this, somebody knows something and somebody will speak at some point. Feels like inside information to me when he says that. It's not necessarily true that somebody knows something and somebody will speak at some point in all the facts as we know them. But he says it as if it's true. I didn't know at first, but I can tell you how I knew she was being listened to here. This is the Netflix part. She called me and said, Daddy, you know, when I spoke to you about the people sending me stuff, this Amy, there's a documentary about you. How come people can say they saw you on the beach? And I said, I wasn't on no beach. No way. I live in Grenada next to the beach. I hardly ever go to the beach. So, I mean, why would I be on the beach? It's not a denial. It's a question back. If Amika said, why were you on the beach? He says, why would I be on the beach? He's just reflecting back the question. He doesn't deny being on the beach with Amy. He doesn't do it when you watch the Netflix documentary. He doesn't do it then in his telling here of the story. He says, I wasn't on no beach, no way. I live in Grenada next to the beach. I hardly ever even go to the beach. You do go to the beach, but whether you go to the beach or not is irrelevant. Just were you on the beach with Amy? People say they saw you. I said, well, if people have seen me somewhere, then of course they have evidence that I know this girl. That knocked me backwards. If people saw me somewhere, then of course they have evidence that I know this girl. I said, I've never been anywhere since after talking to that girl that night. I mean, that was it. I mean, that's very strange. I've never been anywhere since after talking to this girl that night. That was it. Well, you have been to other places. I think stress was rising there, especially with the emotion of being questioned about it by his daughter, and some strange words come out, like surfacing, like they have evidence that I know this girl, like the non-denial about being on the beach. I don't know what happens, but here he is more emotional and expressive than he has been before. He actually starts to talk a little bit more about things and get a little bit more emotional. And I think we've got leakage, talking about evidence of knowing Amy, talking about the truth surfacing. But there's no denial about the beach story. I noticed that in Amy Bradley is Missing on Netflix. I noticed that here as well. There's no straightforward denial. Now, listen, what else have I noticed that is missing from everything that we've seen from Yellow? Any denials of anything? There is no denial that, they went to that Viking lounge. There's no denial that he took Amy to his room that night, for example. There's just no denials of any of the accusations made about him at all. Also, there is no interest in finding out the truth. Did you notice that he doesn't want to know what happened to Amy? He has no curiosity about it whatsoever. As a human being, I would expect him to show some curiosity about what happened. As someone jammed in at the centre of it with lots of accusations around him, I would expect some curiosity or interest in finding out the truth as well, because that would be in his favour. And also no desire for any form of justice, any form of closure around this whatsoever from Alister Douglas at all. So a lot missing there. Denials, interest in finding out the truth, and a desire for for justice as well. So listen, what do I think after having looked through all of that? There are a lot of red flags. Big ones for me are, we went into the room. I think he did something with Amy that night. And I don't mean, I think, him and Amy did a lot more than just that one dance there. And no denials about anything there. Those are big red flags. We've got player mode in action. This guy seemed to be looking for vulnerable women. I don't know why, but he seemed to want to prey on women who needed consoled. And Amy, if his story's true, she was stressed and smoking a lot and unhappy with her life, then she was a vulnerable person that this guy in player mode could pick on. I really think there's some leakage at the end when he's talking to her daughter, because he's talking and the stress gets out, and we've got talk of evidence, we've got talk of the truth surfacing, and we've got that non-denial, and he's so avoiding the key subjects. When these questions are put to him, the answers he gives talk about anything but the questions that are put to him and go down all sorts of routes and avoidances, especially telling us that it was a very tight timeline that he was compelled to do, but also telling us he doesn't follow the rules. Listen, what do you think? Let me know in the comments if you can, or do get in touch on social media. I'd love to know your thoughts on the man they call Yellow, Alister Douglas. If you want more like this, neveratruerword.com is the website. There you'll find a whole load more videos on missing people and other words that people in the news use. You can find podcasts as well. And also, if you fancy signing up for the monthly newsletter, you can do that there as well. In the most recent newsletter, August 25, I do look into the Netflix interview between Amika and Alister, if that's of interest to you. You'll find it all at neveratruerword.com, and we'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.